Hello everybody, and welcome to this video, which is part one in a series of experiments that I intend to perform to sort of evaluate binary option trading sites and platforms against one another. This particular experiment pertains to the majority vote strategy, which we had discussed in our series Understanding Binary Options. I believe it was part 4. And what this strategy essentially says is that a lot of trading platforms and sites will provide information as to the way other people are choosing put versus call for a particular trade. And essentially, when we utilize the majority vote strategy, we believe in safety in numbers, and we say that, well, irrespective of our own logic or what our own intuition tells us to do, we're just going to do whatever the majority of the people are doing, and therefore we're going to believe in safety in numbers. And essentially, if they win, if the majority of people win, we're going to win too. Now, for the same exact trade that's happening across multiple different sites, essentially people should have the same amount of information, and in fact the information they're using should more or less be the same, because presumably they're getting it from the same reliable source or sources. So what we'd expect to see is that irrespective of a trading site or platform, people should be trading in roughly the same way. So what this experiment is going to do is we're going to look at two trading sites, binary option trading sites, and they're chosen for no apparent reason. It's just a fairly random choice of these two sites, and we're going to compare the same index, or if time allows us, multiple indices, at the same time for the same exact trade, and we're going to look at the way people are trading for that particular trade, which is to say we're going to look at the statistics that are provided by the trading platform with respect to the way people are selecting put versus call for that trade. And essentially what we're hoping to see is that the information provided by each of the two sites should roughly correlate with one another. It should roughly align. And since I'm doing this in live time, I have no idea what the exact results are going to look like, but we'll get into the analysis component of it later. So let's get right started. The first site I'm going to look at is TradeRush. So let's get to that. TradeRush, there we are. And let's see, it brought us to the US dollar, to the Japanese yen, and this option expires in 7 minutes and 56 seconds. The current value is 85.785, and we see that 55% of the people are calling and 45% of the people are putting. So let's pick another site. I'm going to search BBinary, and here we have bbinary.com, and let's look at the same index. It's US dollar to Japanese yen, and 85.793, whereas here it's 85.759. Those are remarkably different, considering that this option also expires in what I think is 7 minutes something. So yes, it's exactly the same trade, because this one expires in 7 minutes and 14 seconds, as does that one. But essentially their value is 85.760 versus TradeRush shows the value as 85.792, and both of these are the US dollar to the Japanese yen. So maybe that should be a subject of a subsequent video. How often do the values provided by each of these sites correlate with one another? And they are right now 85.793, 85.793, but they weren't just a couple of minutes ago. And that's something we should look into. But at any rate, what we see is that for bbinary.com, it says that 58% of people have decided to call, and 42% of people have decided to put. Whereas for TradeRush, we see 55% of people have decided to call, and 45% of people have decided to put. And these are not exactly the same, but they do roughly correlate with one another, so that does make sense. Let's pick a different index. Let's try the euro to the US dollar. Here we see on TradeRush there's 6 minutes and about 8 seconds left. Let's pick the same index here. Let's pick the euro to the US dollar. And again, we see that the value on TradeRush is 1.32447. Here it's slightly different, roughly the same. But what we see here is on TradeRush, 38% of people are calling and 62% have decided to put. Whereas on bbinary.com, 43% of the people have decided to call and 57% of the people have decided to put. So again, the majority is the same for both the websites, but the distributions are different. In my opinion, 57% versus 43% on B binary is a little harder to call than, sorry, I shouldn't use the word call. It's a little harder to separate versus the distribution on TradeRush, 62% versus 38%, whereas it's much easier to see here where the majority is. And let's go ahead and pick a third index. Let's try the Canadian dollar to the Japanese yen. On TradeRush, it's 55% to 45%. And what do we have on B binary? 45% to 55%. It's completely the opposite. Now, there's something interesting. One would expect that since these people who we're putting our faith in presumably know what they're doing, they should believe in roughly the same things, because they should come to the same logical conclusions, roughly. But here we see that the majority in the case of bbinary.com is in the case of call, and the majority in the case of TradeRush is with respect to put. And the distributions are identical, just reversed, 55% versus 45%. And it's true that the trade is not happening anytime soon. It's in a few. There's still some time to it. It's not expiring immediately. But even so, the distributions are completely opposite, and that's an interesting point. Let's try one more. Let's try the Australian dollar to the Japanese yen. Here's another thing that's not expiring anytime soon. But let's see what we find. Australian dollar to Japanese yen is right here. This roughly aligns. We see that both sites show roughly 58 to 59% of the people are calling, and roughly just above 40% of the people have decided to put. In this case, there's consensus. One more. Let's try the New Zealand dollar to the US dollar. Whoops! Again, we find that on TradeRush, 53%, the majority of the people have decided to call, whereas in bbinary.com, the majority of people have decided to put. And the difference is quite strong in the case of bbinary. It's 59% versus 41%, whereas in the case of TradeRush, it's 47% to 53%, which is slightly closer. But what are we really getting at here? It's okay that different websites show different information, but from the perspective of a trader, it shouldn't matter. We're assuming all sites are exactly the same from our perspective. We just want to trade and we want to make money. So were we to go with respect to the majority strategy, what this is telling us is that depending on which site we're getting our information from, our decision would change. Hypothetically, let's say this particular trade, New Zealand dollar to US dollar, were expiring in 2 minutes and we needed to make a choice right now. If we were to go with the information provided by TradeRush, we would decide to call, because that's where the majority is, 53% to 47%. But if we were going with bbinary.com, we would decide to put, because that's where the majority is, 59% to 41%. And again, these are just two random sites that we picked, but the point that we need to focus on is that there's a lot of variables out there, but we've added one more variable to the mix, and that's which particular website, which particular trading platform we're making use of, because we're extremely reliant on the information that's provided to us by this particular trading website or trading platform. And I think that's we didn't see this for all the indices. For a lot of the indices, truth be told, they were reasonably well aligned. But I believe this is the second index where we've seen completely opposite majorities. And I think that is something that we need to discuss. Perhaps not in this video because it's already been long enough, but in a future video. So in summary, we examined identical trades going on at the same time, except across multiple different trading websites and different trading platforms. And for some of them, we noticed that the consensus is in the same place. The majority, as described in one website, is exactly the majority described by the other website, but we found that that's not always the case. And that's important because essentially this brings one more variable into the mix, which is the choice of trading platform that we intend to use. So that's about it for now. We'll get into the analysis of the data we found in a subsequent video. And I hope this video was helpful, and I hope it helps us understand why the choice of trading platform is very, very important. And we'll talk about this some more in our next video. Thank you very much.